first it was going well, then setback after setback. Loss after loss. Made what was going to be a quick and decisive win into 5 years of hell.
Halo is a term I think everyone has some knowledge and love for, from fighting the Flood in Halo CE, to killing brutes in High Charity in Halo 2, to fighting the Flood again in High Charity in Halo 3. Halo's had so many great moments, and it has so much impact in my life. I mean, I was crazy enough over a year ago to actually review every mainline Halo game. Yeah, I'm nuts. But eventually this whole series finally has led me up to this game, Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite was supposed to be the final saving grace for the Halo series. With many years of horrible and dumb decisions made by 343, I was still personally excited for Halo Infinite. I enjoyed Halo Wars 2 even. I thought it was a pretty solid game. And I wanted Infinite to be the triumphant return of Halo. I watched the teaser trailers like everybody else. Hell, even when I was in basic training, the allotted phone time they gave us to be on our phones, instead of calling my parents and actually bitching about how much this shit sucks, I actually took that precious time to watch the Halo Infinite teaser again and again. I was into this game. I pre-ordered the game, which I never do. I bought a Halo book that I most likely won't read, and I waited for the game. And after setback and pushback, I eventually got Halo Infinite into my hands and played it. And inside definitely will be some surprising results. So finally, with some time passed now and being over a year later, and arguably Halo being in the worst state it's been in a long time, I want to review the final Halo game, Halo Infinite. Regardless, in this video, like all my others, I'm going to be reviewing my thoughts on the development, campaign, multiplayer, and overall just the state of Halo. So with that all being said and out the way, let's jump into this Pelican and fly like a big green brick. To truly understand Halo Infinite, we must talk about the dreaded word, development. And with Halo Infinite, it definitely had a trouble one. But unlike Halo 2, sadly it didn't turn out as well as it did for that game. It all started with the reception to Halo 5, which was definitely mixed. The multiplayer was missing features, Forge was MIA, and the campaign was, well, we all know how that one turned out. People in general were just not happy. 343 promised many changes for Halo 6, and with the release date of 2020, 343 decided for this new game to have a whole new game engine, the Slip Space engine. With it having to be designed from the ground up, and then after that the engine reportedly being difficult to use, in particular the coding and programming being a pain in the ass. Once again, not a good sign. 343 also promised that the Master Chief would be the only playable Spartan in the game. No extra Spartans this time around. But issues in the development would soon be prominent. For one, 343 had multiple ideas for Halo 6, and no central vision, with multiple teams in the studio developing different Halo 6 ideas, which resulted at the end of the day to 4 to 5 Halo 6s being developed at the same time. Once again, not a good sign. In 2018, the first teaser for Halo Infinite arrived, and showed Zeta Halo's environment with its amazing structures, a vast open map, and the amazingly totally in-game animals that we will totally get. Right? Liar! Teaser was pretty great, and people were excited, including me. 343 looked like they were fixing their previous mistakes, but soon issues would soon arise. 343 had a worker issue, as most workers in the studio were actually contract workers, which basically mean they weren't full-time and were only allowed to work 18 months before they had to leave. This became a huge issue as the staff needed to work on a big Halo title was always in flux, which resulted in a lack of content. Once again, not a good sign. 2020 rolls around and the first gameplay is revealed, and yeah, not great. The gameplay looked fun, but it looked like an Xbox 360 game. I mean, Craig, just look at him. People were not happy. 5 years of waiting and this is what we got. 343 promised apparently that it was an earlier build of the game and it won't reflect the final product, despite the fact the game looked like this and from the fact that the game kept being rebuilt and built from scratch again and again from behind the scenes. Once again, not a great sign. 343 also outsourced a lot of work and development on the game to different studios, which resulted in fewer and less consistent content, like having all of their studios work on multiplayer, another on cutscenes and trailers, and also another on the campaign. This is all resulting in a longer development time and more issues. And then of course we had 2020, which, you know, COVID, yeah, this time wasn't great for anyone, and tons of employees had to work from home, already making a rocky development more rockier and slower. And after tons of people left 343 during this time, in particular the studio head Chris Lee leaving in 2020, all not great news. But Joe Staten, Bungie man himself, did come onto the team, and the game was actually delayed a full year to 2021 to quote, polish the game. Multiplayer was announced to be free, and the game would be a live service game with seasonal updates like Destiny. Totally wouldn't be lies, right? Right?
What an idiot.
And eventually, after an agony of delays, people leaving, Craig, trailers, December 8th of 2021 Halo Infinite release, with the multiplayer releasing first and then the campaign on December 8th. To mixed reception to positive reception though. Once again, still tons of missing features, people criticized the cliffhanger of the campaign and so on. Infinite sadly wouldn't get better honestly though, but regardless with all that being said, let's finally talk about the campaign and the story.
Wasp requisition confirmed.
Halo Infinite's campaign and story is definitely an improvement from Halo 5 for sure. Lots of course correcting is done to the campaign and narrative of Halo Infinite, and while some of it's good, some of it still isn't really great. But first, I want to talk about what Infinite does right. I think that the overall story in Halo Infinite is pretty decent, but not great, with its biggest issue being unexplored or fleshed out factions and characters, which I'll get into more later. For one, Halo Infinite also isn't as bad with extra material this time around, as it was in Halo 5, but still isn't perfect. Like, for example, you still need to play Halo Wars 2 in my opinion to get the nice introduction to the Banished, and also you really need to understand and listen to the audio logs as well. Still, a little improvement for over what came before. The narrative style and the type of story Halo Infinite tells is also pretty interesting as well, which basically tells the aftermath of the 6-month time period in battle. Essentially, you have to work back to find out what is going on and stop it and turn the tide. And while this approach of the story reminds me a lot of Halo 3 ODST, which basically involves you working back and solving a giant mystery, I do wish maybe more flashbacks like that game could have been put in to show what was happening. Also, making the first level on the Infinity like Halo 1 would have helped as well. Regardless though, I do like this aftermath type of story and narrative. It encourages curiosity and also shows more odds stacked against Chief. Another positive that I like about the story is the new characters, the Chief, the Weapon, and the Pilot, which are all pretty decent characters. For one, Chief has some amazing moments in this game, and displays a Spartan who is tormented by years of war, Cortana, but still digs in and determined to do what is right. Chief is still awesome in this game and has some of the best lines in the series, and also his new armor design is amazing, having a mix of the new Spartan look but also being influenced by Halo Combat Evolved's Munar armor, which is one of my favorite armors. Overall, I think it looks fantastic. The new AI of the game, which is the Weapon, who is basically an AI who is a copy of Cortana, sent into Zeta Halo to trap Cortana for Chief to delete her. She's mainly clueless in the beginning, but slowly discovers with Chief more about herself, and also Chief learns from her as well. Chief at the beginning is very regretful of Cortana's actions, and blames himself for the whole disaster, and not trusting another AI, which naturally makes sense for his character. But after some trust issues and also other conflicts, eventually he does trust her, and the Weapon also learns her place in this world and also accepts where her past comes from. These two characters also do have conflict with each other in moments in the game, which shows some great writing, but eventually as the story progresses, they do trust one another and grow themselves. I love these two additional characters. Also, we have the Pilot, whose main goal is to see his family again, and will do anything to avoid conflict with anything, which is only natural. I do like this character, and I do understand why he acts the way he does, but he does kind of come off as whiny sometimes. But I do like his transformation into a more brave person is very good and awesome to see. I don't think, though, the way he transforms is really too natural for the way it happens in the game for me, but regardless, I do like him in the Chief's dynamic, and also the Weapon as well. Regardless, even though these characters did need more fleshed out and more development, I do like these characters and they're ultimately one of my favorite things about this game. Now for glaring questions, like how does Infinite continue the Halo 5 story since it is a sequel after all, as bad as that game was? Well, it still needs to be continued, and I overall thought Infinite did it pretty well, but not perfect and still has some issues. Cortana turning evil and trying to rule the galaxy is still continued in the story, and I thought that Cortana's actions and her last death was very done well. It felt emotional seeing Cortana giving a for real last goodbye to Chief, and her apologizing for her actions and forgetting that her and John were a team was very well done and put together very nicely. And also how it's built up in the mystery of all until we find out that she was the one that blew up the ring, delaying the banish, and her sacrificing herself was all handled pretty well throughout the story. It gave Cortana a decent send-off from the disaster of what the writers put her in Halo 5. Albeit she's not perfect in the game, but I thought that overall was handled pretty well in this game. Other positives that I like are also that I love the fact that the Banished are the enemies of this game. They were the villains of Halo Wars 2, which, as I said before, I do think that you need to play as Infinite doesn't really do a great job at introducing the Banished. Regardless though, the Banished are still a cool faction, and I love how they're the enemies of the game. I love how vicious they are and how they've killed many Spartans on the Halo, as you will see in the campaign, which just shows how threatening they can be, and also how they attack the Infinity is cool as well. I still can't help the fact though that they don't really feel as complex or as threatening as the Covenant. Regardless though, I still like the fact that you still see the aftermath of what was an amazing event in Halo game. The main baddie this time around of the Bandage is actually this dude called Escharum, Atriox's second in command. Not Atriox, you know, the dude that threw you out of the Affinity. Yep, he's not the main villain of the game, which, I don't know, it's just kind of lame. Escharum, in my opinion, isn't as compelling as Atriox himself. He monologues way too much and really doesn't make him that threatening. But I do like the theme of challenge and old age and themes that come alongside with that with his character though. Also, the enemy AI and also the factions are generally great and fun to fight. All the races in the Banished have fun and unique roles. For example, elites in this game return from being literal idiots in 4 and 5
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
to being commanders and generally more difficult and requiring more effort to fight. I love how they go camo and you have to stop time and actually fight them. I just love it. Also, the brutes this time around return to be more brutish, but easy to a point and also very aggressive at parts, with some straight up charging you like the old Halo 2 era brutes did. I just love them. And the grunts and jackals are also still great as well, and for example the grunts this time around are just downright hilarious in moments. Overall, the enemies and AIs are really fun to fight in the campaign and story. Another new positive that I like about this game is boss battles, a concept introduced in Halo 2 that never really was fleshed out well after, but Halo Infinite arguably has the best boss battles in the series, with tons of banished depending on the difficulty to fight, and also monitors as well. Most of these boss battles, in my opinion, are still pretty decent and fun to fight. I'm not exactly a crazy boss battle expert myself, and yes, you can say that most of these boss battles still fall into many of the tropes, but regardless though, I still think that they are pretty fun, and they also give your factions more character and enjoyment in the gameplay, so I think they're a pretty fun addition. In addition, also the Hand of Atriox, an elite unit of Banished formed by Escharum after Atriox's supposed death, which is basically meaning that they're sent to kill you. All these members are varied in species and what they're about. I mean, this dude literally has Locke's helmet on him. Like, the hell? Did he kill him? Regardless though, throughout the open world, you can actually kill all the members of this faction and get unique weapon variants of weapons already in the game, but they're just more powerful than their counterparts. You can also read up on their lore and what they're about in game, which is always great to see. And overall, I just loved killing all of them, and it was a really great excuse for exploring the open world. It was fun. Speaking of the open world in the Halo game was a very interesting idea from the start, and also having it on Zeta Halo was also a pretty great idea, as this ring is very important to the Halo lore, as this was the ring where the rogue AI Mendicant Bias released the Primordial ages ago. But the game of course never really explains this that well to the player, as basically characters go around explaining that it has crazy secrets, but never actually get told what they are, which is kind of annoying. I do think that the open world looks pretty cool, from seeing the ring in its destroyed state as very interesting, also the spires in the game looking very interesting as well. I think also the game has a lot of nice side content to do on the map, but sadly suffers from issues I will talk about later. Also, all the Forerunner designs actually look great once again, returning to that aesthetic from Halo 3. Not entirely, but bits and pieces, from the doors to the room layout, all similar to the old designs, which was great and more accurate once again. And overall, I think everything looks pretty great. Not too simple and ugly looking like how it was in Halo 5. Regardless though, Halo Infinite's open world is a cool and great idea, but definitely needed improvement. And then we come to the new character and faction of this world, the Endless or the Zalatin, which is basically brand new to the universe, and is interesting. I think that a species that was imprisoned by the Forerunners for some mysterious crime and being locked up as dark secret is very interesting. And the Harbinger is also a pretty interesting character as well, but once again, like everything in Halo Infinite, it's not exactly explored and leaves too many questions. Still a pretty cool addition to the Halo universe. Also, the skimmers are pretty cool. And now finally for themes of the game. Every story at the end of the day needs a theme to come with it, and this can range from a variety of themes. Usually Halo's best campaigns usually have a theme to go alongside with it. Like for example Halo 2, the theme is basically being true to yourself and not believing in lies. Halo Infinite has a lot of issues when it comes to its story, but I can still pick out a pretty interesting variety of themes. One theme, in my opinion, which I know sounds cheesy, but one theme is basically never giving up no matter the odds. This is shown with the Master Chief, who is told constantly by other characters that the war is over, the Banished won, and they control the ring. Regardless though, Chief still presses on and does his duty, which I thought was very inspiring. The fact that you can move forward into the face of so much loss, Cortana, the Spartans, the Infinity, and in the face of it all still do your duty was a great idea. This was the main theme that I picked up from Halo Infinite's story, and it's honestly a pretty great theme, and very inspiring to myself and personal challenges. There are many ways that this is shown in the story. For example, one cool subtle way this is shown is actually in the beginning when Chief wakes up. He starts out with one bullet and then ends the mission with destroying an entire starship. Overall, I also like other subtle themes, like for example Chief experiencing previous events and feeling guilty over Cortana, and also how it deals with themes of PTSD is overall pretty interesting. Regardless though, I do think that the themes that are in the story are very good, and still a pretty great addition to the campaign. Also, the general design of everything feels just more like Halo this time around, in particular Halo 1 especially, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as 343 wanted to reset the story to a new beginning. You basically start out in a single ring this time around and explore said ring, fight tons of enemies, and get into tons of Forerunner rooms just like Halo 1. Which I think is a good thing, which also makes the story more focused since it's just one location this time around, not a ton like Halo 5. But sadly this also brings many cons with it as well, which I'll get into later. Also, the Forerunner stuff, like I mentioned earlier, still looks pretty good as well, and the Banished designs still look great just like they were in Halo Wars 2. The Unity forces also look great as well, and I love how the Spartans return to that old Bungie era looks and designs. Overall, the design is definitely a step forward in making it feel like Halo again. Also, some of the Easter eggs are really cute as well in the game, like for example this little pilot figure. And overall, I do think that Halo Infinite's campaign and story is a pretty decent and a good experience, but still isn't perfect, and I have a couple issues I want to mention. For cons, the biggest issue with Halo Infinite's campaign is the unexplored characters, factions, and the world itself. Halo Infinite introduces so many new elements to the world, with each 343 Halo game constantly rebooting the series in a way to fix itself and never sticking with one thing. Like Halo 4 the Didact, Halo 5 Cortana, and now Halo 6 the Banished, introducing all these new villains but never fleshing them out, which is kind of annoying. Infinite also, like I said before, introduces a new species called the Endless, which includes the Harbinger. Basically, her plan in the game is to start the Reformation, a plan to rebuild the ring and access the auditorium to basically free her race, as it was imprisoned by the Forerunners. This is all pretty great and interesting, but once again, we don't know why her race was imprisoned or what her race actually did. We know the Harbinger was released by a human by the Banished to help rebuild the ring and made some kind of deal with the Banished, but we never know the specifics of said deal and or why she wants to do all this. In my humble opinion, I think that the Endless really distract from the narrative and also really just shouldn't have been in the game. The Banished should have been the only and central villains of the game, and the Endless could have been saved from some kind of future DLC. They really don't have that much impact on the story and distract from time that could have been used on developing the characters or working on the Banished a little bit more. And then we also have the Banished this time around. Now, Halo Wars introduced some him to us, and like I said before, I think that Halo Infinite should have introduced him to the audience, or at least general people to get them up to speed. But I still love the Banished and think they are interesting. But I've always been confused on what their motivations for doing the things that they do. For example, I don't know if they want to conquer things for fun, or that Atriox likes power. I really don't know, and in this game it's no different. The Banished want the ring and they want to use it as a weapon, but why? Maybe to fight Cortana? I mean, she did destroy Atriox's homeworld, which does give some motivation for the Banished fighting the humans and the created. But once again, these motivations are never clear at all, or really what they're trying to do, and they needed to be fleshed out overall. This also goes with some of the characters. I already mentioned the Harbinger, but she needed more fleshing out, and this also goes with some of the Banished as well. Escharum basically is being the big bad, which I already mentioned how dumb that is. But once again, his main goal is basically he wants to control the ring, and just loves talking and talking how basically we suck and he doesn't.
Even from beyond this life, your will is served. Your forces occupy the raised field. Within eyes of you, it will be under Harbinger control.
And it's really laughable in most parts and annoying in others. Also for other characters in the Banished, for example, Jaga the Spartan Killer, which was hyped up in the marketing, but in actuality he really doesn't do anything in the story. He shows up at the beginning, then shows up at the end, and we kill him, and that's it. I think honestly the game should have explored his characters and have some more badass moments for him, and not make him so underwhelming. And I think in general the game should have fleshed out the enemy faction of the Banished just way more overall. Another issue with the game is the cutscenes. While mostly being impressive in moments, are still pretty lackluster because of their limitations and the fact that they never cut. Similar to God of War 4, this game basically does this to immerse the player, and while moments it is great, it does restrict a lot of moments in the game that could have benefited from multiple cuts or wide angle shots or a close-up. Also, I think that another issue is just the repetitive locations for the missions. Just like Halo CE, which was full of repetitive Forerunner rooms, Infinite takes a lot of things from Halo CE, and sadly this as well. I honestly think there should have been way more variety in the settings in the story. Like for example, maybe having some desert areas or winter areas or other constant changes in the location that make the gameplay and missions feel more fresh. I also think that the open world aspect of the game, like I already mentioned, was interesting and ambitious, as it wants to entice you basically by killing Banished members with special weapons, or destroying bases or securing fobs and so on. And while all this content is pretty decent on its own, I would have actually loved actual side missions with objectives, characters, or even possibly cutscenes in my opinion. And also I feel like that the map should have included more variety. Sure, there's tons of mountains and forests, but it all feels kind of barren and the same. And yes, there are some character in it, as there definitely are moments throughout the campaign you get to see cool little sights of wreckage or banish other Forerunner structures or Unisys equipment, like I love this Frigate for example. But I do think that the open world could have been made a little bit more appealing by having more urban areas, or I don't know, animals like the trailers showed. Regardless though, I do think that the map is still pretty decent. It has a decent amount of content to try and accomplish. Once again, I do think there's still to be more variety in the setting, and also more interesting objectives and side missions would have been nice as well. Also, those hilarious propaganda towers, which basically have some of the funniest lines that the grunts say in the game. Just a hilarious part of the game still. And finally, for another major problem with the campaign is really the lack of real finality in this game. What do I mean? Well, basically, alongside the new endless species and the unexplored Banished characters, the overall story just feels like Halo 5.5, like a pilot to a TV show or something. The whole game starts out with this amazing cutscene, but in my opinion, this whole section should have been playable. Everything that the game tells in its audio logs needed to be shown visually to the player. Imagine we heard that in Halo 1, the Pillar of Autumn's events were told in Halo CE in an audio log. Wouldn't that be just lame? I think the overall game should have just shown more of these events, and made the story more of a finale than an aftermath of a finale. Furthermore, I honestly think that nothing crazy except Cortana really happens in the story. Chief really doesn't defeat the Banished, the Endless aren't stopped, and our heroes are just like, what's next at the end of the game? I would have preferred a Halo story that would have taken more risk and just had more of a true ending to the series. Like, I don't know, maybe in the story Chief would have sacrificed himself in one final moment to save the universe or something, like in Halo 3 or something like that. But nope, this doesn't happen. This is all very annoying as it leaves us, the fans, wondering what's going to happen next in the story. Are there any of these questions going to be answered? Which, in spite of recent events, the planned campaign DLC that would have answered some of these questions might actually never happen though. Overall though, I wish that the story's narrative and campaign would have just told a more complete and thought-provoking story. Overall, Halo Infinite's campaign definitely has a lot of pros, but also many cons to go with it as well. I personally feel the campaign is definitely a massive improvement from what came before, but there are still way too many unanswered questions or unfleshed out characters to make the story truly as great as something like Halo 2 or Reach. Regardless though, the story is still solid and it's a pretty decent to good campaign. The gameplay for Halo Infinite is flat out might be the best in the series, or at least up there with Halo 3 for sure. The gameplay brought back many fun Halo sandbox elements from older games, while improving the formula into something really exciting. First, equipment is back in Halo, with many new additions as well, like this cool drop-down shield, and also, I gotta mention, of course, the amazing grapple hook. I just love this thing so much and what you can do with it. You can grapple the walls, but also grapple plasma cells and throw it at your enemies. And also grapple weapons even, or even freaking hijacking banshees with it. I really don't care if it breaks the sandbox, I just love it. Also, all of the guns and weapons feel balanced this time around and are all mostly great, from the Unity weapons still being really solid to even the new additions being great as well, with my personal favorite being the Commando. Also, the Banished weapons have a nice mix of Covenant weapons and Banished and Brute ones, with my personal favorite being the Ravager. Also, you have the Forerunner weapons, which actually return the form as well, featuring the Great Sentinel beam to the Cinder Shot. All of them are very solid. And the weapons also have great sound effects and overall are all pretty great. Vehicles this time around are also pretty good as well, but I do wish that there were new vehicles featured from games like Halo Wars in the game though, and I also think that the terrain is also very much not kind to these vehicles as well, but they're still cool. Also, the game introduces the concept of upgrades into Halo for the first time. You can actually get Spartan cores throughout the game or the map and upgrade Chief by improving his equipment, making himself better. And I thought this was a pretty great addition to the gameplay, as well as for more player growth throughout the game and also chances to improve your equipment, and overall improves Halo for the better. Also, the Valor system is pretty nice in the game, which allows players to capture fobs to earn more Valors, which unlocks more guns, personnel, and vehicles. And overall, pretty great stuff, but come on guys, still no Pelican in the game. Overall, still a neat addition to the gameplay, and the gameplay is still sick as hell, and great and excellent. The soundtrack for Halo Infinite this time around was a collaboration effort with multiple composers, but was supervised by Joel Yeager. The soundtrack this time around is much more like many aspects of the game, trying to fix mistakes prior, and return Halo back to its original form. This soundtrack features many classic Bungie era type music, and like many of the songs with updated versions alongside as well. Like for example, this amazing updated version of the Halo theme being shown called Zeta Halo for example. It's a great version of the theme, and overall the music is actually better than previous games, with more distinct themes, like aggressive tracks for the Banished or more militaristic, softer pieces for talking moments. Overall, I thought the soundtrack was very solid and very good. Now we finally come to the multiplayer. Released before the game in November of 2021 and being free to play, this was done because 343 wanted to make the multiplayer to be a live service experience, and also more casuals being able to play the game. And with seasons supposedly releasing every few months and having a quote story in the multiplayer tying it all together, and also hopefully eventually campaign DLC to help further flesh out the game and hold interest into the product, all this sounded very interesting and exciting if it was all done well. In reality, we have a much more depressing experience. Regardless though, let's get into it. The first season of the multiplayer Heroes of Reach is an overall decent one. The story, massive air quotes here, is basically you're a no-name Spartan. Meet Spartan Aranka, and basically she trains you in this Easter egg of a facility after news of the disappearance of Laconia Station and the Infinity. In Season 2's story, it's a little bit better this time around, with Spartans Akuma and Dean spying on a new repurposed Banished shipyard. They get spotted and they have to leave, but a banished AI, Irentus, tags along, and in order to contain it, Dane puts the AI chip into his suit, trapping it. They eventually meet with the commander to fix the situation, and eventually all of the Spartans trap the AI into an Oni server, saving Dean and also gain important info about the banished. The story of the multiplayer, while commendable, is nothing to write home about. The narrative as it is very loose as it is. And also they just need to have better writing to make it into something special. I do like the banished AI though, it's still pretty funny. Alongside the story, air quotes, there is also of course a different amount of game modes, or really to be honest with you, more of a lack of this time around. When the game launched it was a big issue with only 3 game modes at launch. No co-op or forge. But that was 2021, and now is 2023. How is the multiplayer now? Well, the biggest issue with Halo Infinite's multiplayer still in 2023 is still the lack of content. Basic features that Halo has always had, from replayable missions to the tragedy that was split-screen co-op. Yep. Let's press F to pay respects, boys. Basically, after Halo 5, 343 promised us that split screen was going to be part of the next Halo game, and people were expecting it. Sure, you can say that split screen isn't as popular as it used to be, especially with the co-op online features, but it's also at the end of the day about trust with the consumer. And 343 at the end of the day just lied to everyone. Basically, after much delays and waiting, 343 just came out and said, yep boys, it's just cancelled. We're not doing it anymore.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Which is hilarious because once again, modders are actually able to find a way to glitch the game to have split screen co-op. And also the uproar from this event was massive, with Fire 343 hashtags were everywhere around this time. Once again, not really a great sign for your company.
Not a great plan.
Regardless, now the multiplayer in 2023 features seasonal event modes, 7 game modes with modes stuck in playlists, which basically means no capture the flag, or sadly, no affection in the game yet. Press F to pay respects, boys. And then also we have Big Team Battle, which honestly is a pretty fun game mode, but albeit pretty buggy. Slayer is also still pretty cool, and I especially love Tactical Slayer with its more stripped down version of the Halo game mode. Fiesta is still obviously a great addition as well, and also Joint Ops, the new seasonal event, is a pretty interesting game mode, which is basically being a more advanced version of Capture the Flag. Still pretty fun, and mostly all of these game modes in Halo Infinite are very fun. The big issue with them is that there's just simply not enough of them and more need to be added. Also, we have the new AI bot training mode and the Academy, which are all pretty decent beginner sections to the multiplayer and do a decent job at introducing players into Halo. I especially love the bot training mode, which basically involves you fighting AI in typical Slayer matches. This was one of the things I wanted previous Halo games to have, and I thought it was a great addition. Still though, there is no split screen and obviously no online campaign co-op at the time of making this video. Once again, features that should have been there at launch. The customization in Halo Infinite is decent but flawed. Essentially, you can still customize basic things like your shoulder pads, chest, and also even add amazing prosthetic leg pieces. But still missing that reach level of customization with the ability to basically change your body size and other features. Also, some of the cores in the game you can't get, like for example the samurai armor, which basically you can't really customize beyond colors as well. Just basically limits the customization and makes it feel more restrictive. And while the customization in Halo Infinite is still pretty decent, it definitely needs a lot of work and less restrictive features. I also love the AI in this game, which comes with your player in multiplayer. It doesn't really have a huge impact on matches, but it's still that nice cherry on top, especially with the AI's great lines. Also, vehicles and weapons are also able to customize as well, but like the Spartans, not really in a whole lot of ways. And of course, if you don't have that annoying battle pass or use real money in the annoying shop, you can't really get anything that's great or amazing in the features and the weapons and vehicles. Overall, I think that there should have been less restrictive customization, more options, and just less things locked behind the annoying battle pass. Forge, which was recently added to the game, which is apparently in quotes, beta, sure 343, is overall just an amazing addition to the game, and maybe the best Forge tool yet in Halo. The ability of some people to truly design some amazing maps is an amazing feature and just staggering. I mean, I went into this one map where someone made this amazing Waffle House made in Forge. I mean, look at all this detail. The elite's cooking. Like, bruh. Regardless though, I may be not the expert when it comes to designing maps in Forge, but regardless, I can still tell when something's great. And I still think that Forge in Halo Infinite is a great feature, and hopefully will improve in time. Then we come to the live service aspect of Halo's multiplayer, which could have been something interesting and cool if it was done well, but in reality it turned out to be a nightmare for many Halo fans. From the slow update to just the seasons taking 6 months or more to come out and get out the door. In my opinion, I think 343 should have managed the live service way better and just should have prepared for it more. Like, for example, this is how it really should have been done. A new season comes out every 3 months with updates coming out regularly and a new DLC expansion to the campaign coming out every year, just like how Destiny does it. Sadly though, 343 has not been able to keep up with the pace and keep the content flowing as it should, and especially with recent issues, I'm not really optimistic for the future. Regardless though, hopefully 343 will continue to fix the live service and also with the many issues with the lack of content and fix it despite of recent events. Halo Infinite's multiplayer is a prominent prospect, with many generally great modes and amazing gameplay. The main issue with it lies with the many basic features still needed to be put into the game, or when these features are added to the game being taken way too long to do so. I do think that Halo Infinite's multiplayer has a lot of potential, but too many things push it back for me from making it one of the best multiplayer experiences. What could have been Halo's comeback honestly came out as a lackluster experience. Regardless though, hopefully in time the multiplayer will get better and continue to grow and evolve into something actually content complete and just amazing. Halo will always be one of those franchises I will always value, from its amazing campaigns to amazing times in multiplayer. Halo Infinite was supposed to be the ultimate comeback for Halo and 343 Industries. With many ambitious elements of it trying to be a live service video game to an open world campaign, Halo Infinite tried many things to make it the best game it possibly could be, and I think that some of these absolutely do work. The gameplay of Halo Infinite is the best in the series, the weapons are amazing, the enemy AI is great, and the campaign and story, despite many issues, is still pretty solid. And the multiplayer, despite starving for content and lacking basic features, still has a lot of really cool features and modes in it, and all of these are pros for the game, but I can't ignore the massive issues that come alongside this. Like for example 343's bad management of the live service, and also just generally a lack of basic features in the game, like for example classic game modes like Infection or even just a basic XP system. And just now recently Microsoft laid off a lot of employees at 343, which makes the future of Infinite seem very uncertain, with the possibility of DLC possibly scrapped and future content updates being even slower than they actually are. Still, as a Halo fan, I have hope for the future despite the many setbacks. Maybe one day we will get DLC to come out and other features, but I'm not really at the end of the day crossing my fingers. And regardless, despite all these negative aspects, I still think that Halo Infinite is not a horrible game, just very flawed. And as a community of Halo fans, we should absolutely do our best and have the right to call out 343 on their crap and try to keep improving the game and have our voices heard. Like the Master Chief, who was against massive odds, still at the end of the day does his duty and needs to finish the fight, which I think all as a community can absolutely do together. And hopefully in the future the Infinite becomes a better experience for everybody and Halo fans, and hopefully the future of Halo looks more brighter after these recent events. Regardless though, overall, if I had to give Halo Infinite a rating, I'll have to give it a 3.5 out of 5 Jackal Snipers. Halo Infinite is still a good game, but missing too many features and also too many other basic concepts just missing. Well, I made it to the end finally. Finally finishing the last mainline Halo game in the series. Whew, what a journey. I finally concluded the journey I started with Halo Reach over a year ago in this series. I honestly loved playing through every single Halo campaign and reviewing them again. I honestly loved the experience of it and exploring the universe that I love so deeply. And I really appreciated the opportunity to share all my passion and love for this series with y'all. And even though this may be the last Halo game so far in the series, I'm still going to update and make Halo videos on and off again. Regardless though, thank you all for watching this video of course, and also this series in general, and I hope you all have a good day. See ya.